Very good afternoon to you all. I'm going to speak about a topic that is very close to my heart and also to this region, and it's the issue of converting forests for oil palm, and give you a bit of WWS perspective. WWS palm oil vision is really to see a future where palm oil is produced responsibly without loss of high conservation values or high carbon habitats while contributing positively to the conservation of biodiversity to benefit forests and people. And our goal is that by 2020, we will see zero loss of high conservation value habitat and zero net greenhouse gas emissions from oil palm expansion. Since the founding of WWF 50 years ago, we have always been primarily focused on the issue of forests and deforestation. And particularly around the late 1990s, we became increasingly very concerned with the issue of converting forests for agriculture commodities with soy and palm oil. So I think one of our successes is really putting the issue of forest conversion from oil palm expansion on the agenda. We helped to establish the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil in 2003, and the standards for the RSPO was established through a multi-stakeholder process in 2005. I think WWF has also been very key in the establishing the high conservation value as a key tool for land use planning in producing countries. Last year, we published the WWF Palm Oil Bias Scorecard when we were particularly very concerned that sustainable palm oil was available in the market and the uptake was extremely low. And this year, WWF had proposed a new planting criteria, actually together with New Britain Palm Oil, that was implemented this year. So I think we have to remember that the problem with palm oil really isn't palm oil, but it is the way in which palm oil is developed. And today, the conversion of tropical forests and peatlands for oil palm expansion is ongoing. The World Bank estimates that approximately 600,000 hectares of area is cleared for oil palm annually, and we actually believe that this figure is quite conservative. And significantly, we see an increasing problem of the conversion of fragile ecosystems like peat for oil palm, especially in Indonesia. When we actually look at the current state of the sector, I think we've identified three broad areas where we are focusing our resources and engagement, and that's the issue of policy, supply, and demand. And today, what we are still seeing is that enabling conditions still do not support sustainability. The production of sustainable palm oil continues to be very low. 6% is good, but certainly we can look forward to seeing higher production. There is only really a handful of companies seriously committed to RSPO certification. The market is not demanding for sustainable palm oil. They're certainly not walking the talk. So when we actually look at enabling conditions, what are some of the key challenges in it? We have to really address the issue of government and the enforcement of legal compliance to local laws. Looking at the RSPO as a voluntary standard setting body, and I think something that would be particularly of importance here is the issue of finance, because finance today and investments still continue to fund a large amount of oil palm expansion. In looking at government, we have to realize that there is no systematic land use planning taking place throughout most of the producing countries, and policies do not recognize high conservation value or high carbon habitats. Therefore, land use planning is not established nor is it enforced. There still continues to be more profits to convert forests for oil palm than it is to maintain them as standing forests. And this is really a challenge also to the finance community to look for REDD mechanisms to ensure that there is a stop to forest conversion. And while there is approximately in Indonesia 5 million hectares of degraded land, developing oil palm in these areas continue to be very difficult. I think what we also have to recognize is that the RSPO is moving from a standard setting to operationalizing of the standard. It is a voluntary mechanism, and the sector and the Secretariat and the Roundtable has to push members strong enough to ensure that there is progress happening faster. Standards need to be continuously improved, such as that of the greenhouse gas criteria. New plantings policies have to be enforced. The Secretariat strengthened. Looking very quickly at production, high conservation value approach is still not widely used by the industry, and there really isn't still an agreed framework for greenhouse gas assessments of land before conversion. And increasingly, we are seeing a problem of smallholder expansion into very sensitive areas in protected areas. There is also, beyond Indonesia and Malaysia, significant land grabbing taking place in countries and continents like Africa, Latin America. When we look at the demand, we also have to recognize that there is a very important stakeholder, which is that of traders and distributors. And one of the increasing challenge we're seeing is the lack of transparency in the supply chain that allows for unsustainable palm oil to be hidden throughout. And companies do not know where palm oil is being sourced from. On the demand side, there's lack of awareness or confidence in certified sustainable palm oil as a solution. China, India, and Indonesia, the three largest consumers, continue to absorb unsustainable palm oil, and everywhere there's a low demand for certified and sustainable palm oil. When we look at investments, WWF just recently conducted a research looking at the market capitalization of the whole sector. And total oil palm investments of just publicly listed companies, we've identified about 58, was estimated at 155 billion US dollars, of which 52% of this was actually insiders, 23% made up of institutional investors like fund managers, pension funds, and then the balance of that was free float. In looking at the stock exchange where palm oil is being traded, 91% of these companies reside in Asia. And since 2004, we estimate that approximately 17.6 billion US dollars was transacted throughout various mergers and acquisition, equity, loans, and bonds. So what does this mean for institutional investors? I think institutional investors have a large say in how palm oil can be operated. To date, these are the top 20 companies or institutions that we have identified which are very significantly invested into the sector, of which they make up approximately 1 million hectares of land bank. So I think this is a key question that any investor really needs to ask. You have to ask yourself, do you have a responsible finance or investment policy? Does it include a section on covering forest, palm oil, or extractive industries? Have you reviewed your due diligence process for new business transactions to ensure that environment and social factors are factored into business propositions? How do you interface with your clients to look at improving their company operations, averting risks, and improving environmental practices? Have you considered investments that change the way businesses operate and become more sustainable? Have you joined the RSPO? To date, there's only 8 institutional investors that are members of the RSPO. And so just to show you some of the visual images of oil palm development, this is a natural peat forest that was cleared for pulp production and potentially also plantation development in Indonesia. The draining of a very fragile ecosystem, peatlands with high carbon stocks from a very healthy and natural forest. And increasingly, the problem of burning of peatland by smallholders, the clearing of these areas for development, the deaths of wildlife, and the endangerment of local communities. So these are some things to factor in when you consider investments into the sector. Thank you very much.